You're confused? I'm fucking confused, bro. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife and today I'm going to take you through the pretty sizable stack of books beside me that I have acquired over the months of March to May. There's been quite a big haul has gone on. It felt like every time I passed a bookshop I went in and picked up something. Let us start chronologically with the books that are on the shelf here. The first one is actually a little bit of a lie because I didn't get it in March. I got it in February, but it arrived after I had already filmed my haul for January and February. This one was again Rachel by Marion Keyes, and I have already read it. I have already absolutely adored it, and it shot straight into a 5-star read for me. This book is following Rachel from Rachel's Holiday about 25 years after she has come out of rehab for a drug addiction and for alcohol abuse, and Rachel has completely turned her life around. She is now living completely clean. She has a partner, she has her own life, and she is actually working as a therapist in the cloisters, which is where she initially went for help 25 years ago. However, someone from the life that Rachel has assumed that she had left behind is coming back out of the woodworks, and this could spell trouble for Rachel. This book is pretty much filled with Marion's amazing writing style, with the storytelling that she is so well known for. And of course, because it's a Marion book, it's also filled with quite a lot of difficult topics, but all of them I felt were discussed really well, very respectfully, with a lot of tact. It does come with a couple of trigger warnings for drug abuse and alcohol abuse, for bereavement, for child loss, for pregnancy. There are a couple of things that you should be aware of before you go into this book, but I absolutely adored it. It's such a phenomenal read, and I definitely recommend it if you're a fan of Marion's. Next up is another book that I've already read. So if we were playing balancing the books, I'd actually be doing pretty okay so far. We'd be 2 for 2. This is Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. I was heavily influenced to buy this by Michelle from Michelle's Library. She said it's a phenomenal story, a sapphic romance, childhood friends to lovers, small town vibes, and those are things that I will just eat up for dinner. I adored this. I know that Breanna from Four Paws in a Book has the same feelings in me, so if you want to see what her thoughts of this book are, go and check out her channel as well, but this was absolutely up my street. In this, you are following Delilah, whose stepsister Astrid is getting married, and Delilah is living in New York and working as a photographer. And Delilah is hired by Astrid to be the photographer for the wedding. She also has to come back a little bit earlier on to get some shots of like the bachelorette party and the rehearsal dinner, and just get a little bit of a snapshot of what the wedding prep is going to be like overall. While she's there, Delilah meets with one of Astrid's friends, Claire, who is a single mother, is still living in the town, is working in, I believe, a bookshop. And Delilah and Claire start to get really familiar with each other and really start to reconnect, because they had known each other when they were teenagers. But of course, life happens and they had fallen out of contact a little bit. I really loved watching their kind of slow burn romance get back together, and I absolutely cannot wait for the second book of the series, which is going to follow Astrid after the events of this book. Keeping in the form of lesbian romances, I also picked up The Split by Laura Kay. This one follows Ali, who has gone through a breakup with her ex-girlfriend Emily, and heads back to Sheffield, which is where she grew up, and also brings Ali's cat Malcolm with her as a kind of a parting present. When Ali is back in Sheffield, she meets with a childhood friend of hers who is also LGBT, and they kind of start to improve each other's lives. They sign up for a marathon. They really start to help each other get over their respective losses, and I am so excited to pick this one up. You know, when you read a book, you loved it so much, but you want a copy for yourself because the way that you read it, you didn't own the copy the first time? Well, that's what happened with The Unholy Winners by Christina Lauren. This was my introduction to Christina Lauren's books at all, and I fell head over heels in love with it. It is a fake dating book, it's an enemies to lovers book, it's also got sisters in it, it's got Maui in Hawaii as the setting. All of these just added up to be absolutely everything that I was looking for in a book. You're following Olive, whose twin sister Amy is possibly the world's luckiest woman. She wins every single competition she's ever entered. She gets every promotion that she's ever gone for. And Amy has basically had her entire wedding provided or paid for by winning competitions, including a seafood buffet that was served at the reception. Only 2 people of the entire wedding party didn't eat the seafood buffet. Olive and the groom's brother Ethan. And everyone else at the wedding gets food poisoning. Amy and Dean then can't go on the honeymoon that they have won because it's non-refundable. You can't cancel it. They basically are locked in an ironed contract. So, because Olive and Amy are identical twin sisters and there wasn't another name put onto the booking, just Mr. Thomas, Olive and Ethan are kind of sent on the honeymoon. Problem is, Olive and Ethan cannot stand each other. As you can imagine, there's then a whole lot of forced proximity settings. There's a whole lot of them being thrown in together in places that they didn't necessarily want to be put together. And their relationship really starts to thaw over the entire book. Next up is the continuation of a series that I have utterly enjoyed so far. That is The Heart Principle by Helen Huang. It's the third book in the Kiss Quotient series, and they are all somewhat connected in that the main character of this book may be connected to or related to or works with the main character in a previous book. So here you're following Anna, who is a classically trained violinist, and one of her videos has gone completely viral on YouTube. But she's struggling then to reconnect with the heights that has brought her so far, and she's getting a little bit of imposter syndrome. So her professional life isn't going super well, and her personal life isn't going super well either. Her boyfriend has sat her down and told her that he is looking to open their relationship up. So she decides to just go for a string of one-night stands with completely undesirable guys that she would never have looked at either way. One of the guys that she ends up sleeping with is Kwan, who is the cousin of Kai that was in the second book, The Bride Test. And I absolutely adored Kwan in that book, so I'm really excited to get to see him again. And I know that there is going to be a much more steamy romance between Kwan and Anna in this book, and I'm really excited to see that. I've seen a couple of mixed reviews about this one. Some people didn't really like some of the things that it was tackling. Some people thought that it was a little bit of a letdown having read the other two books in the series, but I'm going to go in with a clean mind, clean slate, and just give it its best shot. I love to read books about books, so when I heard about By Any Other Name by Lauren Kay, I knew that this was one I was going to enjoy. This one here follows Lainey, who is working as an editor in a romance publisher. She has got an engagement to the man of almost her dreams. He ticks about 99% of the boxes that she's looking for. At work, Lainey is given the task of working on the next book by Noah Calloway, who is very much a kind of reclusive author. Nobody can really get any words out of him, and people are finding him a little bit difficult to work for. Once the secret of why Noah is so difficult to work with starts to come out, everything that Lainey thought that she knew about love, about relationships, about work, and about romance is completely turned on its head. I am really interested to see how this is going to go, because the blurb gives away absolutely zero of what that secret is, and now I need to know what it is. Next up is a book that I was very kindly gifted by Asha from A Cat, a Book and a Cup of Tea. We discovered that we were both turning 30 within a couple of weeks of each other. Hers was in May and mine is coming up at the end of this month. So we figured out what is the best way to welcome somebody into a new decade of their life? Get them a book. I gifted her one and she also gifted me one back. We also didn't know that the other was doing that. And I got a copy of Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan from her. I have read this one. I haven't read any of the other two books in the series, but I didn't actually have a copy of it when I read it. I borrowed it from a friend of mine and I fell in love with it. I've also seen the film and I feel like it's a pretty solid adaptation of the book itself, but I would love to go back and read this one again before I can get stuck into the other books in the series. This book follows Rachel, who is a professor of economics at NYU, and she is going out with a man named Nick, who is a little bit secretive about his family and his background. All that she knows is that he is from Singapore. When they get engaged, Nick invites her to Singapore to meet his family, and it turns out that they are flush with cash. And I mean flush with cash. They are probably one of Singapore's most wealthy families. I absolutely loved the depictions of Singapore, which is a country that I've already been to and I've already visited. So it was really nice to escape back into Singapore, see all the places that I was somewhat familiar with, have descriptions of food that I had somewhat eaten while I was there. And I'm really excited to not only reread this, but also then afterwards continue on with the rest of the series. Next up is the new release by an author who has already appeared in this. This is Something Wilder by Christina Lauren, and I absolutely worship the ground that these two women walk on, so I have very strong hopes for this. This is a second chance romance following Lily and Leo, who broke up a couple of years ago. And Lily is a kind of an archaeologist, a dig treasure finder, and she kind of lives her life on the maps that her father, who is a world-renowned treasure hunter, has left behind him. So when Leo turns up on a dig that she wasn't expecting him to turn up on, things kind of start to go sour for her. However, now that they are forced to spend a little bit more time together, is their relationship going to start rekindling? Next up is another book that I have already read, but I had a NetGalley copy of this, and sometimes if a book really strikes me on NetGalley, I will get another copy. Sometimes if I'm reading it and I'm like, this is the wrong format, I needed to read it in another way, I'll still get another copy. And I think it was option B for this one, Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I think I sped through this one a little bit too quickly. It follows Nora and Charlie, who work as kind of opposing book publishers, book editors for rival publishing houses. Nora and Charlie have never really gotten on together. Anytime that they have met up together, there have been sparks flying, but not in a good way. Nora and her sister Libby go to a small town in North Carolina on a holiday together for a month to follow the fortunes of a TV show that they both really enjoy and something that connects the two of them together. While they're there, Nora quite literally bumps into Charlie in a coffee shop while she's ordering coffee for herself in the morning. And it kind of sent her into a spiral because she wasn't expecting to see him here in this little hideaway that she had. However, their relationship really starts to thaw out throughout the rest of this book. And I really want to see again just how much their relationship develops, because I felt this book was a little bit more steamy than any of the other Emily Henry books that I've read, and I'm interested in finding that again. I don't think this is one I'm going to reread anytime soon. It will probably be around next year by the time I pick this up again, but I am willing to give it another go. Speaking of giving it another go, I know I've said here before that Tessa Bailey and I do not get on. We have had our differences in the past. However, I think that the problem with it is that I was listening to her books as an audiobook. And if you're hearing Baby Girl in your ear 25,000 times a day, you end up wanting to push somebody off a balcony. But through my library here in Berlin, I had an e-copy of the first maybe 4 to 6 chapters of It Happened One Summer, and I liked it. I was intrigued. I think if I read this book as a physical copy, I don't have somebody whispering in my ear, Baby Girl, every 20 seconds, maybe we'll get on a little bit better. What initially drew me to this book is that it is a Schitt's Creek retelling, and I am obsessed with that TV show. This book follows Piper, who has kind of pushed her father's buttons for the last time. She has really gone a little bit too far and ended up spending a night in jail. Her father decides that she is going to go and do her penance in a small fishing village called Westport, where he owns a bar, and she's going to be the manager of this bar for the summer. She also here bumps into a man named Brendan, who is a fisher living in the village. He kind of starts to not repurpose her life, but make her see that there is a little bit more to life than partying. This book is kind of marketed as an Alexis and Ted reimagining, and that's one of my favorite relationships from Schitt's Creek. So I am a little bit intrigued to see how this goes, but I am also a little bit wary because it's Tessa Bailey and she's burned me in the past before. Finally is one that is really going to surprise everybody, because it sure as shit surprised me. I did a blind date with a book in my local bookshop where everything was wrapped up and you just had one sentence on the cover to tell you what the books were. I picked up the romance one first. It ended up being The Road Trip by Beth O'Leary, and that's not a book that I've gotten on well with in the past. So I went for my second favourite genre, which is historical fiction, and it turned out to be Ariadne by Jessica Saint. First of all, that is one of the most stunning covers I have ever seen on a book. I do not know a whole lot about this book, given that it was a blind date with a book and I didn't properly research it before I went in for it. But what I understand from this book is that this is a Greek myth retelling, and I was obsessed with ancient Greece when I was in school. I really loved reading about like all of the ancient, so like ancient Rome, ancient Greece, ancient Egypt. I was all over learning about these. So I'm really hoping that because it's something that I was somewhat obsessed with as a child, it's going to help me to really enjoy this book. This massive pile of paper has all come into my hands in the last couple of months. Of the books that I said I haven't read yet, which are the ones that you think I should start with? Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.